The Vothari Dominion had never lost a war. In 9,000 years of expansion, no species had ever made them retreat. Their fleets did not conquer, they absorbed. A world was given one choice: submit and pay tribute, or be erased so thoroughly that no orbital telescope in the next 1,000 years would find a trace it had existed. Humanity was 2 years into its first contact with the galaxy when the Vothari found it. They did not send an invasion fleet. They didn't need to. They sent a single collector ship, the kind used to formalize tribute from newly discovered species too weak to resist. And a single collector, a species liaison drone officer named Ren-Thal, to read Earth its terms. What the Vothari did not know, what no one in the galaxy knew yet, was that 11 months earlier, a joint Earth expeditionary unit had gone missing during a border skirmish nobody outside 3 governments had been told about. 9 soldiers, no survivors reported, no bodies recovered. The Vothari collector ship dropped out of transit above Geneva with full confidence that this would be a 15-minute formality. It found one man already waiting on the tarmac. He was unarmed. He was in civilian clothes. He had a physical scar down the left side of his face that predated modern regenerative medicine, which the ship's sensors flagged as statistically improbable for a species this technologically young. Ren-Thal's first words, translated flatly through the ship's speakers, were, "Human, where is your government's negotiator?" The man looked up at the ship for a long moment. "You're looking at him," he said. "Also, you owe me 11 months." His name was Ilya Marchenko, and until 11 months ago, nobody outside a classified personnel file had ever needed to know it. Ren-Thal's sensors ran 3 separate scans before it accepted what it was seeing: the scarring, the bone density readings that didn't match any human medical baseline on file. The fact that this single unarmed man had walked out alone to meet a ship capable of sterilizing a continent and hadn't so much as raised his heart rate doing it. "You are not a designated planetary representative," Ren-Thal said. "No," Ilya agreed. "I'm a designated problem." "Explain." 11 months ago, 9 of us went out on a routine patrol near a debris field your survey drones had been quietly mapping without permission. We got jumped, not by pirates, by something with your hull markings. He tapped his own scar. 8 of my people didn't come home. I want to know why, and then I want to know what you're going to do about it. Ren-Thal ran the coordinates, cross-referenced classified border logs it should not have had access to, but did, because the Dominion tracked every incursion its independent contractors made into contested space, whether or not it officially acknowledged them. The match came back in under 2 seconds. Rogue harvesting cell, unsanctioned. Presumed self-terminated after resource depletion. Ren-Thal had delivered this exact non-answer to 43 species before Earth. It had always worked. Grief didn't have leverage. Grief just had to accept the paperwork. "That incident falls outside official Dominion activity," Ren-Thal said. "I am not authorized to discuss unsanctioned actors. I am here regarding tribute terms for your species' assimilation into—" "I didn't ask what you're authorized to discuss," Ilya said. "I told you what I want." Something in his voice made the ship's threat assessment routines flag an anomaly they had no category for. Not aggression, not desperation. Something colder and steadier than either. "You are one unarmed human," Ren-Thal said. "You have no leverage." Ilya smiled, and it did not reach his eyes. "I walked out of that debris field alone," he said. 8 of my people didn't. Ask yourself what that means before you decide I have no leverage. For the first time in 9,000 years of tribute collections, Ren-Thal's ship quietly, without instruction, began rerouting additional sensor arrays toward the single man standing on the tarmac. The story Ilya told was simple, and that was what made the ship believe it. 9 soldiers, on a joint reconnaissance patrol in a system nobody was supposed to be watching, had stumbled onto something they weren't meant to see: a Vothari, independent harvesting cell. The Dominion's polite term for the raiding crews it used to strip resources from systems too far out to formally claim, then denied ever existed, if anyone objected. The harvesters didn't ask questions. They opened fire. 8 humans died in the first 90 seconds. The 9th should have died with them. He didn't. "You want to know what happened to the other 8?" Ilya said. "I'll tell you exactly what happened. They died doing their jobs, defending a research outpost that wasn't supposed to exist, against an enemy that officially doesn't exist either, so their families got a letter that said, 'Lost in an accident during a training exercise.' And you survived this encounter," Ren-Thal said. "I did more than survive it." Ren-Thal pulled the classified debris field data again, this time cross-referencing wreckage counts instead of casualty reports. 41 Vothari harvesting vessels had entered that system. 6 had left. "That is not possible," Ren-Thal said. "Human technology at the time of this incident was insufficient to engage Dominion military hardware, let alone destroy 35 vessels." "I didn't say I did it with technology." The silence that followed was, for the ship's threat assessment core, the single most alarming 90 seconds of its operational history. "Explain," Ren-Thal said again, and this time there was something almost like uncertainty in the translation matrix. "You people made one mistake," Ilya said. "You've spent 9,000 years fighting species who fight the way you fight. Clean, from range, with rules everyone agrees to break the same way. You've never fought someone who grew up on a world where the rules got thrown out a long time ago, and where we lost 8 people and we're still standing isn't the end of a story. It's the start of one." Ren-Thal did what every good collector officer does when a routine tribute run stops being routine. It called for confirmation. The response took 4 hours to arrive from Dominion Command, and by the time it did, 3 more things had happened. First, Ilya Marchenko had not moved from the tarmac. Not once. He stood there through the entire 4 hours, hands loose at his sides, looking up at the ship like a man waiting for a bus that was already late. Second, Earth's governments, who had been kept entirely out of this exchange, exactly as Ilya intended, began noticing that a full Dominion collector ship had gone dark on all diplomatic channels above Geneva, and started scrambling exactly the kind of high-level attention Ilya had spent 11 months making sure would arrive after he'd already had this conversation. Third, and most importantly, the Dominion's own archived sensor logs from the debris field incident finally finished reprocessing, because Ren-Thal, out of pure procedural thoroughness, had ordered a full forensic reconstruction of a battle its own command had spent 11 months quietly filing under self-terminated, presumed resource depletion. The reconstruction did not show a harvesting cell running out of resources. It showed one human soldier, bleeding from a wound that should have been fatal in the first 2 minutes, doing 3 things no boarding party training in Dominion military doctrine accounted for: refusing to disengage when his suit integrity failed, using the wreckage of his own dead unit's ship as a weapon when his own ran out of ammunition, and, in the final 11 minutes of footage, walking, on foot, through the open vacuum-breached corridor of a Vothari flagship, toward its bridge. Ren-Thal watched the footage twice. "You should not have survived hull breach without a suit," it said. "I didn't have a suit failure," Ilya said quietly. "I had a suit that finished its job protecting me for the 90 seconds it was rated for, and then I finished the job it started. You destroyed a flagship's bridge crew with no weapon. I had a weapon. It just wasn't the kind your scanners flag." "What kind was it?" Ilya's voice didn't rise. If anything, it got quieter. "The kind you get when 8 people you'd have died for are already dead, and the only thing left to decide is whether the 9th death on that ship's log is going to be mine, or theirs." Dominion Command's reply, when it finally came through, was not the reply Ren-Thal expected. It was not an order to withdraw. It was not an order to escalate. It was a single, unprecedented instruction, flagged with a priority code Ren-Thal had never seen used outside first contact protocols with species the Dominion had actually lost battles to. A designation that existed for exactly 43 other species in 9,000 years, none of them human, none of them anywhere near this young. "Suspend tribute collection," Reclassify subject species. Unresolved hostile engagement. Casualties pending resolution. Authorize direct diplomatic contact at command level. Do not, repeat, do not, escalate. Ren-Thal read the order twice before it understood what it meant. The Dominion did not send collectors to species it had already lost a fight against. It sent negotiators. You are being reclassified, Ren-Thal told him. Your species is no longer scheduled for tribute assessment. Good, Ilya said. Now let's talk about the other thing. What other thing? 8 names, Ilya said. I want them in your official records. Not as casualties of an accident, as what they actually were. Soldiers who died defending human territory from an unsanctioned Dominion incursion your command has spent 11 months pretending never happened. I want it in writing, in your archive, in a form no future administration can quietly delete. That is an unusual demand for a tribute negotiation. This stopped being a tribute negotiation the moment I walked out here, Ilya said. This is a debt collection. You took 8 lives that weren't yours to take. I'm not asking for compensation. I'm asking you to admit, on the record, that it happened. Ren-Thal ran the request through 9 separate compliance filters, none of which had a category for grief formalized as a legal demand. And if Dominion Command refuses? Ilya looked up at the ship, the same way he had 4 hours earlier, the same way he'd apparently looked at the interior of a burning flagship 11 months before that. Then you go back and tell them the 9th soldier is still standing, he said. And he's got 10 more years before he runs out of things he's willing to walk through to get those 8 names written down properly. The written acknowledgement came through 14 hours later, the fastest formal amendment to a Dominion incident report in the Dominion's recorded history. 8 names, 8 ranks, 8 causes of death, listed accurately, filed permanently, cross-referenced in a manner that no future collector, negotiator, or bureaucrat could quietly erase. Ren-Thal's collector ship left Earth's system without a single credit of tribute collected. The first time in 9,000 years a Dominion vessel had departed a newly contacted world with nothing to show command but a signed acknowledgement of a debt it hadn't known it owed. Word of what happened above Geneva moved through Dominion channels the way word always moves through empires built on fear. Quietly, at first, in reports nobody wanted their name attached to. Then, less quietly. Then, within a standard year, as a designation logged permanently into first contact protocol training for every species the Dominion had yet to meet. Species, human. Threat classification, unresolved. Note, do not send collectors. Send negotiators, preferably ones prepared to apologize first. Nobody in the wider galaxy ever learned exactly what Ilya Marchenko had done aboard that flagship in the 11 minutes the footage covered. The full reconstruction was sealed at his own request, not to protect a secret weapon, and not out of shame. Some debts you collect quietly, he told the one reporter who eventually tracked down the story, years later, after Earth had joined the wider galactic community as something other than a footnote. You don't turn them into trophies. You just make sure the people who are gone get remembered right, and you make sure whoever's left owes you the truth. The reporter asked him, finally, the question everyone wanted answered. Were you afraid, walking into that ship alone? Ilya thought about it for a long moment before he answered. I wasn't walking in alone, he said. I had 8 people with me the whole way. I just carried them instead of the other way around. He never gave another interview after that. He didn't need to. The debt was collected. The names were written down, and somewhere in a Dominion archive 9,000 years deep, a single human incident report sat permanently flagged with the designation reserved for the only kind of enemy an empire built on fear had never learned how to process. Not a threat that could be destroyed. A debt that could not be ignored.